So teaching them ways to be able to like be less reactive is one of those ways. So what makes somebody less reactive? Go work out, eat good food, sleep a lot. These like basic like mental health tools that can give them the environment that's propitious, which is the right environment for them to actually make the best decisions.
Welcome to the Generation Youth Podcast. I'm your host, James McLamb. And if you were a part of the summit that we had at the first week of February in 2025, you saw this guy. This guy's Justin. He's our new friend from up above from the Great White North. We're not talking about Minnesota for you people from Minnesota. We're talking about even further. My friend Justin, how are you doing, Justin?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, James, and hello everybody for attending today. So,
Hey, I really,
Oh, sorry. You may go.
I was just to say, I really appreciate and value the contributions that you made to our summit that we had recently. And we may get into some of that as we talk, but really we want to talk about some other things as well. But before we do, our audience has made it very clear they don't want James talking about the guest. They want to hear from the guest about themselves. So if you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself to the Generation Youth audience.
Sure. So, well, hello everybody. My name is Justin Larsen. So I have a company. It's called LarsenMotivates. My favorite color is green. My favorite food. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna go like that. But anyway, moral of the story is I'm a public speaker for a living, and I teach basically in schools and auditoriums and workshops and all sorts of stuff. I teach educators, teens, and all sorts of like school format people on how to address conflict, particularly in bullying situations, and how to basically solve communication issues in a nonviolent way.
You
Anyway,
know, that's a big issue that we have. It's for those who followed the podcast, they know that over the years we've gone into this quite a bit. Why are you passionate about wanting to help young people and those who work with them understand how to resolve conflict, especially as it relates to bullying? What motivated you to get involved with this?
all right, so many answers to this, but I'll try to keep it nice and short for you. Anyway, so why do I care about what I do? One of my favorite topics to talk about. So, first and foremost, obviously, if I'm talking about bullying, you can kind of expect I am coming from a bullying background. I was raised and I was bullied from elementary school up until the last year of high school. And honestly, it's a topic that touches me. It affects me like very deeply. But what made me actually want to do something about it is my sister, whom she passed away from cancer, and she had this board on her fridge, and on that board motivated my basic like want to like help others, because on the board that she left behind it says, because of you I didn't want to give up. During a very low part of my life, I realized that I had to change the lifestyle that I wanted, and I wanted to do something that was meaningful and worthwhile of my life. And you know what? I've always been that go hard dream guy that like follows that aspiration of wanting to do what I want and like wanting to help people. So when I heard that legacy of my sisters, I went through like the standard going to school, studied cognitive neuroscience, go by it, but eventually I reached a point in my life where I realized I was being a phony in my own shoes. And when I was growing up, what I identified most with is how I stood up to bullies. Like sometimes I did it wrong and I did it really wrong. But what I learned in my past is how to actually do it correctly. And when I used my words, I learned so much power in it, like how communication really plays a part in all the conflicts that we have in real life. As it turns out, conflict is at an all-time high. We go on social media, people are disconnected. They don't communicate anymore. They accuse, they blame, they basically do everything in their power to separate each other. So communication, although we are close because we can be connected to more people, we're not. What we are is more divisive. What I noticed is that what I learned when I was getting bullied, how to like stand up and communicate properly to reduce violence, is actually exactly what is needed. So when I saw the message board of my sister, because of you, don't want to give up. I decided to address this very real issue of suicide, try to help people not give up on life. So down this road, when I was like talking and thinking about what I wanted to do with my life, I wanted to help people. So that was my choice. Then I had to figure out, okay, where's the problem? So I went with bullying because that's where my backstory came from. But after doing so much research, I realized that how we address conflicts actually persist into adulthood. So I spoke with mental health experts like therapists and stuff like that. And one of the main causes of like adult like problems is how people addressed bullying in their past and
Wow.
how they feel about their issues. There's a lot like based off of like, oh, I didn't do anything. I didn't like stand up for myself. I didn't do things the right way. And that persistent like the confidence that people bring on and later in life and how they address life in general. So knowing all of these things, again, sorry, I'm gonna try to keep this a little brief. I could talk for hours again and again, but moral of the story is that I found that conflict and speaking to people is one of the biggest problems that we have today. And personally, it's the problem that I'm good at because I can speak well. And I've also learned a lot about it. I've done my research and I've found the problem. So, why do I do what I do? Because I don't want kids to give up.
Mm.
And what makes it so that I am credible is that I'm going to do the research and I'm going to ask the right questions and I'm going to keep asking questions. If I have to live in my car to do this to help people, I will do it. So I have found the solution. And that's what I want to share. That's what I do. Why do I care? Because it's my entire life.
Well, Justin, one of the questions that I hear a lot of times when I'm addressing bullying and I'm talking about it, and this comes from an older generation, maybe my generation, maybe a little older, maybe a little younger. They'll say, "Well, isn't bullying, unless it's something that's physically harming, isn't it just a natural part of growing up? Should we be making such a big deal about the fact if a kid's picked on too much because I was picked on and it made me tough. It made me into the man I am today." So how do you address that when you got adults who understand that it can be severe, but they're looking at it, say, hey, if it's not something physical, if it's not something that's driving them, down the line, a little bit of picking never hurt anybody. How do we address that?
Well, so you bring up a really good point, but I'm going to be really honest here. So you're talking about somebody that learned from the experience. Problem
Mhm.
is, people today tend to blame and victimize themselves to avoid learning about situations.
Now, what
So
do you mean by that?
so when we blame like somebody, for example, like say like, oh, I'm gonna use like an example like politics. Oh, the liberals did it. Instead of like looking at an argument and trying to assimilate knowledge from it, when you blame, you kind of separate yourself from the other position. So you can't learn what's happening. So in bullying situations where say like I get bullied and like I get bullied about my nose. If I blame, oh, it's because they're being an idiot, they're being stupid, they're being a jerk, they're being whatever. I'm separating myself from the fact that my nose is what's bugging me and I have to deal with this. This is what's bothering me. And in older generations, sure, like I get it. Like some people are the exception where they have learned from their situations and grew from them. But the reality is, most people don't have the tools to realize that they can handle these situations. Some people use it as a growing experience, but others, they just do it to assign their identity. I am not good. I am not strong. I am not this. And that leads into lack of confidence and lack of basically dealing with yourself later down the road. So depression, anxiety, and like stuff like that. So older generation, sure, yeah, you might have learned from bullying, but that's not everybody. And that's why we need to talk about it. Some people need to know how to address it. And of
I
course,
think
it
I
is what
think
it is.
you are spot on the fact that a lot of people have the tools a little bit better to handle it, or maybe are able to put it in perspective a little bit more. Hey, this is not. And the point that you just made, that a lot of people will internalize this, and it'll hurt their self confidence because they'll see their whole these people who are bullying me or saying these things about me. They've got some truth about. I must be something bad. I must be something thing where maybe some others have kind of did it and said, you know what, they're just off the rocker on this. I'm not that bad. I can, adjust to this. So that's a good point. That's a good point that it does affect their self confidence and self image greatly. That's a
Mhm.
great point. Now, earlier you said that you handled it wrong to begin with before you learned how to do it right. I want to know what you did wrong.
How about I tell you a story?
I love stories.
Love stories. Well, I got one doozy of one. So I told you a little bit earlier, I was bullied in elementary school up until the end of my high school year. But I didn't have the same bully. I had different bullies every year. But in secondaire 2, which is in French school system essentially, secondaire 2 is the eighth grade, if I'm like recalling. Yeah, eighth grade for like like for English school systems. And I was not getting bullied as much in this year, but I was getting into the groups of people that were bullies. I was being able to be colloquial with them and being in their groups. And I witnessed this group bully this girl. And I was in that group and I didn't do a thing. I did nothing. I was just there in those situations. I chuckle a little bit. And later, what happened is I got intervened by the principal and told me, "Hey, you're gonna get suspended for 2 days for bullying this girl." And I thought to myself, I didn't even do anything. But this girl had been going through problems that were linked to her family situation and getting bullied by the people that I was surrounding myself with. And my inaction was actually the thing that was causing her more problems because there was more people against her. And the problem was I was living this thing called cognitive dissonance. If for those of you that don't know what this concept is, it's cognitive dissonance is you having beliefs about yourself. So, say I believe I'm a kind person. The action that I take, if it resonates, the same thing. If I think I'm a kind person and I do something kind, like open a door, you're in synchrony with yourself. Cognitive dissonance stipulates the idea that when you have a belief about yourself and you do an action that doesn't correspond to that belief, you will be in dissonance, which will cause you mental turmoil, problems like that until you address it. So in that context, what happened was like I was getting bullied and I had this belief about myself that I would always stand up for the bullied, that I would always be that example for against it. And when I got suspended because like I was chuckling at those jokes from the bullies that were bullying this girl, Marilou, I was in dissonance with my belief about myself and I was in turmoil. I was depressed. I wasn't happy about what I was doing. And you know what? That's also something about bullying that people don't realize is you don't need to be a bully to actually result to see the effects. Just being around bullying makes people like their mental health go worse because you think the environment is bad. There's a book that talks about it. I don't know if I could say the title because it's got a swear word in it, but it's from this like good guy. I'm gonna like use the right words for it. So the no butthole rule. Let's put it like that. Anyway, and he talks about the study about like just witnessing bullying actually puts everybody around into the like problems. Okay. Can we go back? What was the question at first? I'm so
Well,
worried.
it was what did you do wrong? And
So what I did wrong is that I didn't act and I didn't stand up for myself. Thank you so much, James, by the way. So my inaction, I was
that's
living
why I keep notes, man.
yeah. And you know what? I started standing up for that girl afterwards, and I lost those friends. And you know what? I was standing up for myself, like doing the classic thing, like "You're an idiot," blah blah blah. Stop doing that. And you know what? Because I would stand up for myself in that way, I would actually get bullied in return. But at
Mm.
least now I was no longer in dissonance. I was now aligned with who I am. I stood up for myself wrong by calling them out like idiots. I learned later in like Soldat 5, which is 3 years later, to Soldat 2, which is the 11th grade. And I started using my words and started talking calmly. And what I noticed is that I never fought anymore. After that point, there was this one bully, the bully just stopped. And I realized, wow, words have power. How you use them is right. And I've gotten into a lot of problem situations because of how I acted about bullying. But what you do wrong is not trying to like solve yourself, not trying to solve conflict. You try to win when you stand up for yourself. That's not it. The point of not if, of standing up isn't to win and then lose. It's not about separating you from another person. It's to make things better
Mm.
with people, and that's what I want to teach, and that's what I do teach. Anyway, so I did it wrong, and now I do it right.
So, how can a parent? Let's talk to parents or and adults that are working with you. How can they identify if their children or the children that they're working with, the youth that they're working with, are being bullied? What are some of these signs that someone on the outside can see? Because I think about most of my most of the encounters that I had growing up with bullying and stuff. I probably just held it in because I just thought, oh, it's just part of it's just part of what's going on. I considered it. I was sitting here thinking while you were talking. about, was I bullied really as a child? And I guess I was, but I always considered it more hazing.
Mm,
Oh, they're hazing me to be a part of this. That's why they're picking on me. They're much older. They're picking on me. When I get that age, that won't no longer be the case.
mhm.
That'll be going on. And then I thought at one time, oh, when I get that older, I'll be doing the same to others. And I didn't find any pleasure in it. Not that I was like super nice or anything. I just didn't think it was fun. There were other things I wanted to do besides pick on some new freshman at school. So what are some signs to get back to that? What are some signs that some parents can know to help identify what's going on?
All right. So, first and foremost, for those parents listening right now, or students, feel free to DM me. Send me a message. I will respond to you. I want to figure out this problem with you. So if you really want help and your specific situation, come and contact me, DM me on Instagram or follow my website and talk to me there. Don't be shy. Come talk. I know I'm a speaker and I might look busy, but honestly, you are what I want to help. So come talk to me. So what the thing is, one reality of basically bullying is that kids don't typically try to talk to adults. They want to try to solve their problems on their own. It's part, especially with teens. Teens want to create their own identity. So they tend to separate themselves from their parents and stuff like that to try to figure out their own way with things. And there's a whole there is a lot of material that says this in psychology literature, but moral of the story is that they're going to try to do this stuff on their own. So they're not going to be vocalizing it as much to you. But there's signs. For instances, they won't look up anymore. The classic is looking down, doing the nonverbal behaviors of lack of confidence and stuff like that. They'll stop reaching out. They'll smile less. They'll do stuff like that. They'll go lock themselves up in their room. And honestly, when they talk, it'll be more quiet. Of course, there's always exceptions to every rule. I can't say everything about all kids. Sometimes you'll get an introvert kid that doesn't say anything. I'd say the main issue is when there's a radical change in behavior and visible signs of distress. So lack of grooming. So you can think of the classic symptoms of depression, for example, lack of grooming behavior. So that's not showering as much, not trying to comb their hair, not doing stuff like that. You can also think of what is it? I forget the word, but there's another concept is lack of finding pleasure in things they usually think are pleasurable. So if they like gaming, but they stop gaming, maybe that's something to watch. Again, you're gonna have a hard time, but one of the things is you have to realize that pain is done usually in silence. Pain is usually not visible until it's really you take notice and pay attention. Honestly, wait it out and always try to listen to your kid and figure it out. But standard symptoms there.
So if they have identified it and they suspect that something's going on, and then through conversations, through listening, through dialogue with their young person, they realize, hey, there is an issue with bullying. They are being bullied. What are some solutions
That
that
I
they can use?
Okay. So for the parents there, right? Not the kids?
Yeah, for the parents or youth, you can go in either direction or both directions.
Sure. So one of the solutions, unfortunately, you gotta get the kid to talk.
Mhm.
Whether it's you or not, you try to get them to somebody that they like talking to. Because there's another speaker that actually was appearing on your the Ignite Elevate summit, Brittany Richmond, who actually mentions this. Whenever you speak about your problems, it loses power over you. So one of the ways that kids can start to assimilate their knowledge is have somebody they can trust to talk about. Whether they actually have friends, because sometimes let's be real, sometimes you don't have friends. Maybe you moved to another school from another country or whatever, and that kid hasn't made friends yet. Well, they might need somebody else to talk to. You can go to a therapist or stuff like that. That's one way to go about it. School counselors if you don't have a lot of money. A lot of these situations is about first getting them to talk, because when they can talk, they can start to figure out their own problem
Mhm.
first and foremost. It's like an addiction. You don't know you have an addiction until you start talking about it. But anyway, one thing is to get the kids to talk to somebody they trust, first and foremost. Another thing that you can get the kid to do is make them realize they have value. So one of my things in my speech, my keynote, the one I teach kids, is that they always have worth. And it's not because there's something different from you, that something that's different with you, something that there's nothing wrong with you, that there's something in everything that you say that you can, okay, I'm going to restructure every word that I just said. So kids have value, no, like separate from what other people think. And to get them to realize that is one of the keys that I usually teach. Other resilience tools increase like is for them to zoom out, which also goes into the idea of trying to understand the context. Everything is about this talking and the resilience bit. And what you also need to teach kids is that they can communicate with other people without being mean, without like exploding. This is like one of the like problems that kids have because there's this thing called the prefrontal cortex. So it's the brain. And humans, this is the newest development in like anything that's human. So it's the last thing. It's the part that controls our impulses. It's the thing that helps us plan, make decisions, all these things that are really good. But you have the reactive brain that's developed first. And in teens and stuff like that, unfortunately, they don't have the prefrontal cortex that's developed quickly enough. So they don't have as much control over those emotions. So teaching them ways to be able to like be less reactive is one of those ways. So what makes somebody less reactive? Go work out, eat good food, sleep a lot. These like basic like mental health tools that can give them the environment that's propice, which is the right environment for them to actually make the best decisions. So as a teacher, that's what you should do. As a parent, that's what you should do. If they want to like stand up for bullies, that's where they see me. If they want to communicate properly, that's what they can come see me for.
Well, what would you suggest if they came to you to see? What would you suggest on how to communicate properly?
Okay. So I have a few rules. I call this method D.A.E.S. And diffuse, ask, express, and solve. It. That's my method. So what you first do when you are facing somebody that's bullying you, for example, in like real time right now, is you're going to feel reactive immediately. You're going to be mad. You're going to want to throw it back in their face. So the real tool is to start with diffusing yourself because, we think the situation is diffusing to try to make the other person calm. But the reality is we're going to be the ones that are not calm when we're attacked.
That's a good point.
So first thing, start by diffusing yourself. Just calm yourself down in some way or shape or form. I usually like to laugh it out, be like, haha, yeah, my nose is a little crooked. That's okay. No way. I was thinking about the same thing. Anything that makes you go back to calm. And once you're back to calm, ask. So this is a standard trope. You could use it for anything, even without like being in a bullying context. Ask questions that are what and how questions specifically. Because when you ask why, it feels like you're attacking the person's integrity. So you'll feel attacked when you ask why. It's a very like standard tool. So what is like the reason why you're talking about my nose? Is there some reason like you want to address it? Just break it down. Break down what the person in front of you is trying to say. Because usually it's not about your nose. There's something else. It's not about your nose. And if what they say is also something that triggers you, you go back to diffuse. Diffuse yourself, come back, ask more questions until you get clarity. Once you got clarity, express yourself. Because when you diffuse yourself, you're calm, which makes the other one want to respond calmly. A concept called mirroring is what does this. Mirroring is this thing that gives you empathy. When I talk calm, the other person's more calm in response. If I'm aggressive, the other person is aggressive. If I chew in a lemon, you'll notice other people around go like, because it's sour. You'll make a face. Well, it's the same thing with how we act. So we diffuse ourselves so that we're calm. When we're calm, we can ask questions calmly, so they'll respond calmly. And once you got all that calm energy back, you can express how you feel. Now, this is another tool. Express how you feel without blaming. Without blaming. It's not your fault. It's not them. My nose is crooked. It's because of you. You make me. You keep talking about my nose, and it makes me mad. That feels like the other person's being a bad person. So how about like this? You know what? Like, yeah, my nose is crooked. When I was like younger, I was like in a boxing class, and somebody punched my nose, and because of that, it got crooked, and I didn't have the like income to actually do the operation to put it back. So it's something that really like it bugs me like a little bit every day. And I know it's crooked, and I'm really trying to address that. Doesn't that feel a lot better? The reason why is because when you express yourself, you have to express yourself by using I. Explain your position. Because your point is to express how you feel, not to blame the person. Because when you express yourself and you like actually talk about yourself, the other person sees what you're living, which is something we are very hard, we have a very big hard time doing, is that we keep blaming the other person, attacking them so that they shut down. These are some tools for communication because once you express yourself, you don't feel bad, you don't feel resistance, you feel like you've expressed yourself, and that makes you calmer, that makes you happy.
Mm,
So you give the other person, I'm gonna just reiterate. So days, diffuse. You diffuse yourself to get calm. Two, ask. Give the other person an opportunity to express how they feel. Give them like that, like space for them to actually talk it out so that they can feel like they're heard. Three, express yourself by using I so that the other person can see that what they are doing has a result on you. And eventually, like obviously in bullying situations, you're not gonna necessarily be friends with the person you're talking to. But at least after a conversation that's right, you can have a grounds of respect, which changes the outcome. So in a live situation, I'd recommend using this tool. In my keynotes, I actually make kids live this on stage. So I get a kid to come up on the stage and I ask them to bully me. So I can show them what it looks like. But that's what I would give as a tool in live confrontation. Unfortunately, a parent can't do that hand in hand with a kid. The kid has to try it. So that's why giving these tools to kids is really useful because when they want to address the problems on their own, they can do it.
How about cyberbullying? Would this aspect work also with cyberbullying? Because that's really
That's a
the
big problem today.
frontier in which they find themselves now being bullied more, and that's becoming even more harsh than even physical bullying. In that, because we are getting countless stories of young people being cyberbullied, and it pushing them in pits of depression that have led to severe things, either committing acts against themselves that could lead to suicide or lashing out against, holding in so much and then lashing out in violence that could be horrible as well. So how does it work
Sure.
with cyberbullying? You know,
So my current method, this what I'm talking about, is about live situations.
yeah.
So first and foremost, what is bullying, right? We have to ask, like, what is it? Is it somebody that just yells at you once and then they go away? No. Bullying is repeatedly having stress from a person or a group that like does an effect on you. So like if I repeatedly talk about like bullying you or excluding you from activities and stuff like that. So in cyberbullying, oftentimes what we have is like strangers coming up and talking to us, right? And like sending us a comment because like we responded to a comment on a post or something and people bash on us by what we say. What is this like the cyberbullying? So my method is about like conflict in real time and about when you're talking to them. Unfortunately, online there isn't that discourse. There's already a barrier in front of you separating you from every other person. And but like strictly just looking at internet purposes, that's why people talk like very directly because I'm gonna use Mike Tyson in this context. People are really comfortable talking badly about other people online when they should be getting punched in the face. So, what I'm telling here isn't to tell kids to like go punch somebody, but people are really more comfortable about being honest and mean online than they are in real life because they don't have a risk. They have this screen that's protecting them. They're farther away, they're separate from this person. So, what can you do when you're getting cyberbullied? First and foremost, there's so many contexts. There's so many like different situations with cyberbullying. If you have any questions on that, please come and ask me because I will answer you because like every context is different. Every situation is different. But in a general rule is that online, you have to mainly diffuse yourself and separate yourself from the thing. You have to block that person. You have to block this. And it's okay to do these things because unfortunately, communication doesn't happen well in screens. That's why everybody knows when you're texting somebody, you don't see the other person's reactions. We have a whole like built-in system in our bodies to communicate with people verbally, like body language. It's like something like 80 or 90% of communication, by the way, is through body language. And online, you don't see body language. You don't see delivery. You don't see these things. So the main thing that you can do online is diffuse yourself. And when you have like situations where you see these people if you're actually getting bullied and getting repeatedly bullied by this one person online, then the best thing you can do is have a conversation with this person. And most likely, if they're bullying you online, they're going to do something when you witness them around you. Even in like real life context, they'll look at you, they'll laugh, they'll do stuff like this in real person for the students that are actually getting cyberbullied. So having those conversations when those happen, be like, hey man, like you just like address the situation with them. Be like, hey, you can go straight up to asking. The like D.A.E.S method, just go straight up to asking. In a cyberbullying context, the best thing you can do is talk to them in real life because then online it's not going to work. Like you can solve conflicts online, but most likely communication is not proper. So the method I teach is really for them to address it in real life so that they can neutralize it online.
Well, Justin, you mentioned earlier how folks can get in touch with you, but let's reiterate that now. How can our audience reach out to you, can connect with you so that they can, learn more about this? Because this is a
Big issue.
perennial issue. This is an issue that we see through, literature throughout history, all the way back to, we can see it even in the Bible, very early on scripture. So this is a thousands and thousands of year issue that's going to continue. And as Brittany said, talking about it is going to help diffuse it. So how can they connect with you?
So just want to close up on a point. Again, I can't stop bullying. And I'd be a complete fool to believe that like I can stop it. What we can do is teach the right tools to make it so that it's bearable, that we can deal with it when it happens. Because like you said, for thousands of years, likely all of humanity, bullying happens naturally. It's not like us. It's like a human reflex. But what we can do is how we address it in a way that it's proper, in the right way. People can reach out to me by following me at LarsenMotivates.com and going into my contact me section box. They can also go on my Instagram, my Twitter, or any social media. You can even go on LinkedIn if you want. I don't go there, but you know what? I'll check for you at LarsenMotivates. I have the same key everywhere. You can come there, literally send me a message. I want to help you. I want to find all the situations because you know what? I'm also a professional that's trying to like optimize everything I do. So your situation might be different from anything I've seen. And I'm going to be real. But most likely I've seen the situations before. But if I haven't, I'll figure it out with you. And we're going to go through this together. So please send me any message at any location that is most convenient at LarsenMotivates, online.com or on Instagram, the DM, everywhere.
Well, thank you, Justin, for bringing this message to us. Something that is very close to our heart is one of the original issues that Generation Youth set out to try to create curriculum around over a decade ago when we first started building curriculum and stuff. So this is something that's close to our heart. So I'm really excited when we first met, and the more we get to know each other, the more I'm excited about it. So thank you for joining us today.
Of course. Hi, thank you for always maintaining relationships. I love talking to you every single time.
Well, thank you. And audience, thank you for sticking with us. Look, if you've been with Justin and I for about 35 minutes, you've obviously found a lot of value in what we're discussing today, or you left it on by mistake and you don't even know it's still on. Either way, you're here right now. We want to ask you to do three things. First off, please comment on this, send us a message, tell us what you like, reach out to us in any way. Second, like this. The algorithms on all platforms will respond to you liking this so that others can see it. And that builds to the last one. And this is probably the thing that we ask every week. And it's the thing that myself and the guests really want. And that is to share this episode. There is someone that you know that needs to hear some of the tips, some of the suggestions, some of the insights that we talked about today about bullying, and they don't know about us. So it's left up to you right now to share this message with them, to make this connection so that we can help you thrive, so we can help the next generation be the best that it can be. So please like, share, and comment on this, and we'll see you again very soon on another episode of the Generation Youth Podcast.